Here we go. Episode 157 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. This is our opportunity every week to come together to grow, scale, and build our junk removal dreams. I'm Andy Weins, your host and owner of Camo Crew Responsible Junk Removal in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the largest independent junk removal company in the state, where we really focus on recycling. And we come together every week so that we can teach about recycling, responsibility, and the way we run our businesses. This week, I got a special guest on, Barb Fagan. Barb and I had coffee together 6 weeks ago, a month ago. She hit me up randomly on, I don't want to say randomly. She hit me up on LinkedIn. We had coffee. It was excellent. So, Barb, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I have my book here. I don't know if I should show it in front of everybody, but I have my book.
I always show it up front.
Yeah.
There we go. There we
Yeah.
go. So this is an opportunity for both worlds to come together. So the listeners here, I reference my book, Words Fucking Matter. It's neurolinguistics programming at a fifth grade reading level, essentially. Actually, and today is the start of season 4, episode 1 of season 4 by the way of hillbilly math. So here we are, episode 4 or episode 1 of season 4. So 156 was the last episode of the last season. When I look at it from an annual basis, that's me doing math here. Anyhow, so Barb, why are you here? Let's talk about that.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Because I asked to be here. My words. And I'm serious. You know, we go through life so often wishing or wanting to do something. And if you pause and step back and someone says, well, did you ever ask?
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, I didn't. So I'm getting much better. You and I know with our little riffing back and forth with words matter.
Yep.
And if everything stays in our mind, you know, thoughts, questions, dreams, hopes, entrepreneurial, starting junk removal, if it stays here, it will always stay there. So when I saw, you know, I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while, and the book, Words Fucking Matter, it just jumps out, speaks to me. I knew I had to get it, read it. I have the Audible as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, why don't I just reach out to Andy? He's not that far.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that you did immediately, which resonates with me, is I said, Andy, let's get together. You pulled out your calendar. You said, I'm free on this date. I said, great. Where? Collectivo. It was in the calendar. Once you write it down, you are more likely to get it done.
42% more likely when you write it down. And for me, you know, I talk about, I have a guy coming on the podcast here in a couple of weeks, and he taught me, we had an introduction call maybe 2 months ago. And what he taught me was DOD, definition of done. Because I even realized this today. I was texting with somebody, and he goes, let's stay in touch, which means this conversation is over. I've also had people say, let's get coffee, let's get lunch, let's go to a ball game. And then I'll say, cool, what does your schedule look like? And then all of a sudden, the movement has stopped because what they said and what they meant were two very different things. And it's no different people, you know, in the business world. Oh, I want to grow my business. Okay, what is growth? Well, bigger. Okay, what is bigger? Well, I don't really know. It's like, okay, it's like you can't hit a target you can't see.
Exactly.
Or you know the old adage like, without knowing where you're going, how do you know when you're lost? And it's like, oh shit, that's a hell of an idea. Yeah, you hit me up. LinkedIn, not salesy, not pitchy, very clear and direct what you're looking for, and then that was it.
Yeah.
We did the thing, and now we're here. We're our two worlds combined. We come from two very different perspectives, backgrounds, and yet we've arrived at a lot of the same conclusions. One thing I will say, I've already heard it 3 times now, and it's one of the shit words that do not serve. You love the word if. If is ambiguous. If does not mean anything, right? If gives control to the uncontrollables, while when puts the onus of control on you and also defines a time. So when you declare versus if, when you go out in this world. So that's one thing I'll challenge you on. So one thing Barb and I both have is we have a list of words. Hers are soft words. Is that accurate?
Correct. Soft talk.
Soft talk. So she has soft talk. I have shit words. And what's interesting between the two lists, the one word that appears on both lists is the one word I always cover in my keynotes. The word should. Never should on yourself. Don't should near other people. And most importantly, no shouldn'ting all over the place. So should is a shit word because you ask people, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I should be doing this. Okay. Like I should be eating better. I should be going to the gym. I should be having date night with my wife. I should be putting money aside for taxes or retirement or vacation. Should gets you nowhere. Should is a obligation for something you have no commitment to. And so I do an exercise called should, could, can, will to go from an obligation to an opportunity to a possibility and finally to a commitment because that's what it ultimately comes down to. So like you said, you should take take advantage of more opportunities, should do more podcasts, should text people when they're on their mind. And as soon as you said I will, and as soon as you did the fucking thing, here we are.
And because I do not like the word but, and
Yeah, and yep.
I heard you speak about if and when, and I have been putting it into practice. So, number one, we have to be aware of the words we're
Yep.
using, because how do you use your words? Use better words and less words of the soft talk,
Yep.
unless you're aware of them.
Yep.
So, when I heard you say, it was on a podcast, I believe, you talked about if to when.
Yep.
When I believe it was someone who answered the phones who said, "Well, what if nobody calls?"
Yeah.
And your answer was, "When nobody calls, we will."
Yep. When then language. Yep.
When then, and so I heard you do that a few weeks ago, perhaps,
Yeah.
and I've started to use that myself. So thank you for that. And I'll challenge you one more level on your should detox.
I
So
like it.
I call it a should detox. So when I do a should detox, and I also work with a lot of patients who've had heart disease. So they're going through their recovery and rehab. Oh boy, do we hear a lot of shoulds.
Yeah.
I should be exercising more. I should drink more water. I should pay attention to my fat intake. I should stop smoking. And that is a perfect opportunity to take them through that should. I do a should, could, can. And instead of the will, I add because.
Yep. And you
Which
and I talked about and you and I talked about that. So I throw when I do my 4-hour workshop, that's exactly what I do. I get to the commitment and then I love your because. And that's when we drive home the why. Because there are going to be days when you're going to crave that cigarette. You're going to want to get fast food. You're feeling crummy about yourself. What is your why? And that's like for me this year, my battle cry. Every year I have a battle cry. And this year my battle cry is who am I becoming? And so when I look at the decisions I'm making, I reflect back on that. Who am I becoming? And when I'm in that fork in the road, which decision better embodies the person I want to become someday? And most times it's very clear and obvious what course of action to take. And then I stop doing behaviors that no longer serve me. I start new behaviors and I continue on behaviors that have been great for me. And again, it's that compounding interest. It's like, well, the first day without a cigarette isn't a big deal. Well, string together a couple days, it's going to mean something. The first day you don't stop for fast food. Like I cut fast food out years ago, and even the other day I had a craving for McDonald's. Double quarter pounder with cheese, no ketchup. That's where it's at, Jack. Right? And I was so tempted. It was when I was coming home. Where I was coming home from O'Hare late at night, and for some reason, whenever I fly, I always want McDonald's. That's like my go-to. And so, not stopping to get that double quarter pounder with cheese, it's like, okay, good job, right? And I powered home, and then I ate I think liver sausage and Triscuits because that's also delicious.
that's a Wisconsin boy.
Oh yeah, no, my go-to breakfast is hard-boiled eggs, avocado, and liver sausage. Pure protein, pure fat. We don't mess around. A little salt and pepper down the hatch. Not
You
all mixed together. Just
well, you could. Or what do we eat here in Wisconsin? The cannibal burgers or cannibal.
cannibal sandwiches. Raw
Absolutely.
beef and onions on rye bread. That's where it's at. It's a Christmas thing. You got to make sure you get it from the right butcher though. And normally it's gonna be ground sirloin. Um, I'll eat them at Christmas. I'm not one of those people that's like gotta have it this week. So yes, cannibal sandwiches are definitely a Wisconsin thing. We're much more beer brats and cheese. So we're
Well,
being, and we're also sick. We put our winter weight. At least I put my winter weight on every November for deer hunting, and then I shed it April, May.
you put it on for deer hunting. You know what I would tell my patients, Andy, is most people, especially in Wisconsin, will exercise April through September, and then
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Yeah,
go
yeah,
down and they hibernate for the winter.
yeah, yeah,
You're not a bear, keep
yeah,
moving, keep moving, right?
yeah, yeah.
Doesn't have to be complicated. Keep
Yeah.
moving. If it's
I,
in your house or at the mall, keep moving somehow.
hiking's my jam. Okay, so before, because you keep talking about patients and healthcare and heart disease and all this other stuff. So, I mentioned this earlier. So to get our listeners caught up here, I said we came from two very different disciplines. I have no formal education in neurolinguistics programming, psychology, sociology, the anatomy of a brain. None. You, on the other hand, what is your background? Share
Yeah,
with the audience.
yeah. Thanks for asking. So my background, I started out in education and took a left turn into cardiac rehabilitation. And one could argue it's still education.
Yep.
I was educating, K through 18 basically, so K through 12, and went and got my master's degree in clinical exercise physiology with a focus in cardiac rehab. So working with patients who, and in Wisconsin we have a lot, who have heart disease, had a heart attack, bypass surgery, had a stent placed in, and then they came to cardiac rehab. Spent up to 3 months with us, 3 times a week, working on learning, education, behavioral change, exercise, and then out they went, hopefully not to return. And not if, when they follow the plan, their likelihood of coming back is decreased tremendously. So I've been doing that for a very, very long time as a clinical exercise physiologist, and then up the ranks to leadership roles, continuing in the path of learning. I love to learn. My team would always say to me, "Oh, that's a word Barb doesn't like." And so for a long time, my team knew that words matter. It was words matter, words matter, words matter, obsessively with them.
Mhm.
And when you work with your patients and you're aware again, when you're aware of your words, not only are you aware of your own, you're aware as you are of everyone else's around you.
Mhm.
And when you hear them and their limiting beliefs and why they're unable to reach different milestones or goals, it all starts with their words.
Yeah, no, I love that. So this is how our two worlds have combined. You came from a much more, I mean, an educated standpoint. You talk about words that Barb does not like. I call them words that get me twitchy. I get I get twitchy. So the recent tagline I've come up with for what I'm doing as I'm really shaping and molding what it is I provide the world, it is enhanced communication through simplification. Because when people say things, like I said earlier, like, hey, let's stay in touch, or hey, let's go get a drink, and then there's no action or follow through, you become an untrustworthy individual. And all of a sudden it's like, well, what else are you not being upfront and honest with? Versus saying the thing, ripping the band-aid off. Forget the fucking PC world and the no. Say the thing, do the thing, right? My three-step methodology to life. Do the fucking thing, tell the fucking world, show the fuck up. And I say it like that because I want it to
Mhm.
slap. I want people to be mildly offended because I'm also risking that they might actually get excited. They might actually start believing in themselves when they have an emotional reaction and then respond accordingly to the situation versus emotional reaction to the stimulus. The stimulus is the words I say. The situation is the bullshit you keep telling yourself. So what the hell does this have to do with business, Barb?
What the hell? Well, I look at it as Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there? And it starts with your thoughts, starts with your words. It starts with our language.
Yep.
And when I say language, it's what I think, what I say, and what I write. And all three of those are very powerful. What do we learn in school? Spelling and grammar.
Yep.
So it has everything to do with it. Set your goal. What do they say? If you want to see where you're going, look forward, not backwards.
Yep.
And write it down. Where do I want to go? How do I want to get there? And
Vi-
look at what you wrote down.
Vision statements every month. I commend my girlfriend for this. Every month, my girlfriend, she has a whiteboard right behind her in her office, and she writes down every single month all the things she's going to accomplish. She writes them down in dry erase marker, and she crosses them off when they're done. Drives me mad because it's done. We take it off the board. I'm an operations guy. I want less clutter. I want to, right? And yet every month she puts up all the things that are important and she crosses them off as they go. And the other day was the 29th of April, and she did the thing that she was dragging her feet on. Oh no, the 30th. It was the 30th. It was last Wednesday. She was dragging her feet on something that I thought was like the simplest thing on the list. And yet she's like, I got it done this month. And she crossed it off. And then on May 1st, she went over her list. She completely erased everything, done or not done. She erased it and she started a new list because it might have been a priority on April 1st. And by April 30th, it made not a hill of beans. So it's better to start with 50 things and get 40 done than start with no things and get 10 done.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, it comes down to as simple as the words you put out in front of yourself. As you were speaking there, I was thinking about a jelly roll, and he was, what he said was, "There's a windshield is a lot bigger than a rear view mirror," right? And it's like, what a great line that is, and it's so absolutely true.
Right?
It's like, what are you focused on? I was talking to somebody yesterday. Yeah, that's what it was. So I'm here at Waste Expo in Vegas, and I got talking to this guy at the welcome ceremonies. And I said, there's three places to live in this world: the past, the present, or the future. And a lot of people live in the past, others live in the future, and very few people live in the present. And the present is the best place to live because it's the only place you have control over. And now, okay, so we can all agree that the present is the best place to live. And then is it better to live in the past or the future? Well, by far it's better to live in the future. And then it's like, well, why are so many people living in the past then? Well, because it's comfortable, it's known, it's qualifiable versus focusing on the future. And so one methodology I teach people to shift their brain, and you started talking about this earlier, is the reflect. So in the present, intentionally reflect on your past. Not dwell, not live there, but intentionally reflect on your past. Realize what you can do, and then regulate accordingly. So it's a three-step methodology from the reflection, the realization, to ultimately the regulation of your actions. And those actions, again, these are all rooted in language and all rooted in words. And I took the methodology from the military, from the mass resiliency training developed by University of Pennsylvania, because I was taught all growing up self-control, Andy, self-control. And yet it's not about self-control. I'm not going to control myself. I'm fucking awesome. I want to push the bounds. I want to see where the hell I'm going. Right? Regulating. Ooh, that's interesting. Regulate my energy. Give my time and energy to the right people. I'm at this convention and it's open. It opened at 10 a.m. I walked in at 10:01. And by noon, I walked out because I said, okay, 2 hours of walking the convention. That's my time. And then I'm going to eat. I'm going to come back to the hotel room. I'm going to check some emails, get caught up on a few things, admin. I called a buddy of mine, and now I'm spending 90 straight solid minutes with you here, the audience. So I'm giving you the best versus be at the convention, skipping lunch, running in here at the very end, and then shit in the bed because I did not regulate my time and my energy. Right after this, about a 10-15 minute walk to the convention center. I'll go back there. I'll walk the floor for another anywhere from 60 minutes to 90 minutes, come back here, reset, and then go out for the night. Again, regulating my time and energy throughout the day because I gave myself a plan. And I'm also I'm also realizing who I am. There's a guy I look up to. His name's Charlie. He works for Keller Williams. Smart guy, wicked smart guy, Charlie Stahle. And I got talking to him. He was talking about when he goes to conventions, he is there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, 8 a.m. He goes to every single session. He stays to the very end. He gets every business card he can. He doesn't even check emails for those days. He is full on in. And the guy loves detail, and he loves all these things I don't love. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be better if I was like Charlie? And then I did it one time. I go, this ain't me. I'm the fuck over it, right? Because when I walked in today, the first 100 feet I walked in, I ran into 2 people I knew in the past. I made 4 or 5 great connections in the 2 hours I walked, and then I'm gonna go walk and make another 4 or 5. Right, leaving here with anywhere between 15 and 30 connections after 3 days.
It's perfect.
That's what works for me. Versus 100 connections and a bunch of classes that I sit in that I'm going to do nothing about because I feel the obligation. I should be doing those things. I should be more like Charlie. It's like, no, I'm going to be Andy.
I was going to say Andy.
Andy's fucking great. Well, and it took a lot. It's taken a lot of work through the years to reflect and say, okay, I'm not anybody other than Andy. So let's focus on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm working on a TED Talk, and one of the things that was percolating in my head is, Diana Nyad, Simon Sinek, Brene Brown. You're not any of those.
Nope.
Who cares? You're Barbie.
That ain't you.
You're Barbie, and you're going to do a Barbie TED Talk on whatever it is that you're working on, and that's what it is. And oftentimes, Andy, people do strive to be someone they're not, and that's where they get in trouble. It could be a business owner. I want to be like that particular business owner, when you could be a far better business owner if you simply were yourself.
Yep. Be you.
Yeah, be you. I do want to say, I read it in your book, and it's a great quote. It was Dr. Bill Crawford's quote. 3 things we must do. We must be born, we must die, and in between we must live. Everything else is a choice. And again, all of those choices we make start in our head, and the thoughts that are swirling, and there's 70 to 80,000 thoughts going in our head from the moment we wake up to the moment we lay our head back on that bed. About 70% of those thoughts are negative.
Yep.
So
keep you alive.
What do we do with all those negative thoughts? Well, one of the things I like to think of is when I walk folks through this, through different mindset like activities. Imagine, Andy, if I hand you a jar of marbles and I say, Andy, walk down over to your laundry room and open that dryer door and throw those marbles into the dryer and push on. What do you feel? What do you sense? It's loud, it's chaos, it's noisy. Well, those marbles are analogous to all of the negative thoughts going in and out of our heads. Well, at any time, you can go press off on that dryer and take those marbles out. Just like in our heads, at any point, those negative thoughts, we could take them out. And what I like to say is, when you think it, ink it. So if it's a negative thought, write it down. Look at it. Is there something you can do about it? Do it. If there's not, here's where we get in trouble. It's already out of your head. Why are you putting it back in?
Yep.
And so to me, that's a really great activity. My mother was having some different tests a couple weeks ago. She had her tests, and she was wrapped around her little axle, worrying about all these tests from the moment she had it to the 2 days when she got her results. And I kept saying, Mom, is there anything you can do about it between right now and when you get that report? Well, no. And what did I keep hearing? Well, what if, and all of these. And I said, Mom, I use a little Andyism. When you get the results, we will make a decision as to what to do next.
Yep.
Of course, it happened as I thought, because even her physician said the likelihood of it being, this negative outcome was not
slim to none. Yes.
What does she hear, and what does she dwell on? This horrible, horrible thing. And when it all came to conclusion, and it was not that, I said, now look, Mom, you just spent 2 days with elevated heart rates, blood pressures, anxiety, and look where it is. Nothing different.
Got you nowhere real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Got you nowhere real quick. So I love the Bill Crawford. I love that quote because it is true. our life is all dictated by the choices we make throughout the day. And to
Yeah,
your oh, guys, go ahead.
I would say, yeah, and then what you're talking about there with the controllables versus uncontrollables. In my book, there's that chart that shows, can you do something about it? Yes, do the thing.
Yeah,
No, then why are we worried? Don't worry. Like there's,
yeah.
and again, and when we're feeling stressed, feeling under pressure, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, all when we're not ourselves, as a Snickers commercial will say, we are more susceptible to using that lower lizard brain of ours
Mhm.
that's not thinking clear and creative and confidently. And it's no different than business, right? When you're feeling the pressures of business, all of a sudden you start using parts of your brain that do not serve you. You allow those marbles to rattle around. What I really liked about that analogy too is the more I study words, the more I am conscious of my um, the words I use, as you said, the more conscious I hear it in other people, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, well, I can hear your marbles rattling around
Right.
because they're coming out. You said right, it's 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day, or words governed by thoughts. 7,000 spoken words a day. The words you put in your head, that's what's coming out of your mouth.
Mhm.
When I hear people say like, "Oh, that's not what I meant," it's like, "Oh no, that's exactly what you meant because that's what you said." And when you're retreating, it's because the truth came out. It's like it slipped through the bullshit filter and it came out. The other
Mhm.
the other thing you said earlier that I got excited about when it comes to spelling and grammar.
Uh-huh.
I've heard this before. My brother said this to me years ago. I heard it again a couple weeks ago in Miami. I was speaking at a waste conference, and the first person that came on was a Native American, and he was doing the blessing, the prayer for the
Mhm.
summit, which I thought was quite interesting. They also did we're standing on Native American lands and whatever that is, that thing, which I was really I'd heard about it, I'd never seen it, and I thought this is kind of hokey and dumb and righteous. And then when they actually took the time to explain whose land and what types of people were here before Europeans, I actually leaned into it a little bit. I really enjoyed it. Anyhow, I digress. The gentleman got up and he did the prayer. It was very good. And then afterwards, him and I got talking because again, he's coming from a completely different perspective that I am, and we arrived at the same conclusion. And he used the word what he said about spelling, that um, English speakers use that word spelling and how we put together words with letters, and we
Mhm.
also have spells,
Mhm.
and that's merely what we're doing. This is
Exactly.
that where the manifestation hits reality. And in
Mhm.
business, this is the, hey, we are going this route, we have this goal, here are the milestones to take, versus the, I don't have time for this, I'm never going to get there, I can't scale, when
Yep.
I'm ready. Right, those are spells. When I'm ready, you'll never be ready.
Mhm.
Right, I
You and I,
can't afford it, you'll never be able to afford
yeah,
it.
yeah, or when the time is right. People
It's
say
never
that
right.
in the gym all the time. I'll join the CrossFit gym when I'm more fit. Well,
Yeah,
how about you join the CrossFit to get fit?
yeah.
There's a lot of examples like that. You and I spoke about abracadabra, and when we were
Mm,
having coffee, and it's a universal word. I could
yep.
go to Greece, I could go to Paris, and I can say abracadabra, and most people will say, ah, magic. It's Aramaic, and it
Mhm.
means with my words I create, or with my words I influence. So
I never knew this before.
yeah. So then when your Native American friend was talking about spells, that's when you start looking at, so you got abracadabra, then you've got magic, which is the apparent power of influencing. And then spell would be a word or combination of words that can either um, expand us or constrict us. And so that's really where what he was saying. And to me, that has been, I lean on that abracadabra every day
Oh.
with
So
my,
far, so I got two things so far. You got your abracadabra, and when you kept saying if I think it. Now I'm changing it. When I think it. When I think it, ink it.
when I think it, ink it. And
And
I,
that also goes back to University of Pennsylvania did when you're having extreme self-limiting beliefs and you're starting to spiral.
Mhm.
You write down the situation, and then what you do is capture all the worst case scenarios, and you go all the way to the point of death being the absolute worst case scenario. Because now what you've done is you've gone through the entire progression, and as you do it, it becomes comical at some point.
I
And
bet.
then, right? So you capture those because those thoughts, again, 70,000 or 70,000,
Yeah,
70% of those thoughts are negative. So you capture them, write them down.
right.
Okay. It's like capturing the demon or grabbing the spell. Right now, I own it. It's like you can't hurt me when I'm aware of it. So you write it down. And then the third step is to generate ideal outcomes. So this involves using that clear, confident, creative brain. It
Mm,
involves seeking gratitude and what may come of this, right? Looking at the gift of the situation versus the it happened for me, not to
right.
me. And then what you do is you compare the two lists, you fill in the middle, which is the most likely of all these things that could happen, right? And you acknowledge, yep, I might get fired for this, right? I made a decision, it went to shit. Also, I might get promoted because they see enthusiasm and leadership abilities and outside the box thinking, right?
Mhm.
Um, the likelihood of nothing happening or dying are probably not. So the truth is, again, as they say, somewhere in the middle.
Middle.
And then what you do is once you capture the 3 to 5 things that are most likely going to happen from both lists, you come up with a course of action. And this is a longer drawn out version of the when then language. This
Right.
happens when the boss finds out, then right. So then, okay, I'm gonna have my ducks in a row. I'm gonna make sure that I have the logic behind the decision I made ready
Mhm.
to go. I'm gonna have the data behind it. I'm gonna have the conversations I had with other people documented, so I can say, "Yep, this is the decision. This is how it turned out.
Mhm.
Here was our original hypothesis. So we don't seem as crazy as as the results have now proven, or whatever the case may be."
Yeah, it's decisions. Every decision has a consequence.
Yes.
Every decision,
Yep.
and sometime when you are making these decisions, I love the nothing to death.
Yeah.
You know, you're right. There's some decisions I've made professionally that I wasn't going to die. There was no way I was going to die. However, there was a middle in between where making that decision had significant consequences.
Yeah.
And I made it, I lived it, I owned it. Down the road, it turned out differently than I had thought. However, and however is a little bit of a nice
It's
way to say but.
however is a churched up comma but.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
So so
It is.
I ever so my go-to line back in the day was however comma.
Uh-huh.
It was my dance around polite way of telling someone they were fucking wrong, and I picked up on it because again we're going on a tangent now. I picked up on that when I was at unit movement officer course UBOC 11 years ago, where I was learning how to load planes, trains, and automobiles to go to war. And we had an instructor, good guy, knew his shit. And that course was like accounting, where credit all of a sudden you have to learn credit and debit, and it's opposite of what you always thought it was going to be. Or backing up a trailer with if you ever backed up a trailer in a truck, left is right, right is left,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it's
So you have to completely reverse your thought, right? So that's what this course was a lot like. And he would say, I'm going to butcher it here. He would always say though, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Others have felt the same way in the past. Others have thought the same way in the past. However, comma, and then repeat it. And he probably did this 10 times a day. He would hear exactly what they said and say, "That's a great idea." And other people have thought the same way in the past. However, comma, and then just verbally assault them how they're wrong. So yes, however, comma is a churched up
yep,
comma but.
sure is.
Anyways, I
Sure
don't
is.
now I forget what the however comma was going to
W
because it got me
to
twitchy.
to
It was,
the
it
to
was
the
marbles.
choice with
Yep.
the consequence
There you go.
that initially was negative, in the long run, it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
led me to where I am today.
yeah, because you got basically, well, I'll let you describe it. Pushed out, railroaded. What is the
Well,
into
uh,
your current position, out of where you were and into where you are now?
yeah, it was, realignment. And
There we go. That's a churched up word. We are, yeah. It's like the line in Goodwill Hunting Well, he's like, yeah, management was restructuring, and then it's like, yeah, and then they're like, yeah, management restructuring to people like you.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, we also use this. It's RIF, reduction in force.
yeah. That's a
Yeah,
churched up corporate term.
yep,
I've heard of that.
yep, yep. And you don't think it will happen to you. You
Well,
see
there
it
you go,
happen.
don't you? Oh yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
you see it happening. I'm shielded. I'm this. I'm that. And then one day you realize you're not.
You ain't that special,
You
and your
ain't
job ain't that important.
exactly. The good news is back to your Dr. Bill Crawford. I had some choices.
Yeah.
And I could go left or I could go right. And the first thing I did was head to Ireland for an eat, pray, drink, love, whatever you want to call it. 2 weeks of by myself, you know,
Mm.
traveling Ireland and all of the things though that I did, Andy, and this to me is what helps people be successful in business is even when I was doing something outside of my sort of norm of cardiac rehabilitation, I stayed incredibly connected. And my community became more and more expansive when I was no longer in that field. So when my position was terminated, I'm walking through a vendor, I'm walking through the exhibit hall. Someone sees me and says, "Hey, I didn't know you were looking for a job. I'd have hired you." And my response was, "I don't think I would be wanting to work there." I wasn't even convinced I'd work back in cardiac rehab again.
Yeah.
And then this sentence came. "Hey, Barb, I know this guy, and he started a virtual cardiac rehab platform. He's brilliant, he's techie, he needs someone clinical. You two should meet." And like you and I were talking, okay, you two should meet. Well, you know what? If I want to meet, then I was all over that person. Hey, when are
Yeah.
you going to, when are we going to have that meeting? I continued to do that. We had that meeting May 19th of 2019
Hmm.
and July 1 of 2019, I was working. And to this day, I have said it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Why did it happen to me? Because I laid the path to allow that to happen. So continued to keep my network. So when people talk about starting new businesses and you may be going down this path, all of those people that you've been connected to have something and or could have something of great value as you're sort of going through that path. And bridges, you talked about bridges earlier.
Yep.
Bridges need to remain bridges.
Yep.
Now, could there be an opportunity where that bridge has to it's a bridge to nowhere and you're not going that way?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Likely, yeah.
There's some bridges worth burning, and
Yeah.
that's not all of them. Actually, so right as I walked in the convention center today, I ran into this guy. Never met him in real life. He works for a company that we used to be a vendor for, and we shit the bed on a few projects. This was years ago when we were doing something outside of our normal scope, and we shit the bed on a few projects, and they weren't great to work with either. So I walked up to him. I said, "Hey," I said, "I looked for you last year. We've never met." He goes, "Oh, I know who you are. Hey, how you doing, Andy?" I go, "Hey, I want to let you know that we shit the bed on some of those projects, and he sent me a few off copy emails directly and let
Mm.
me know exactly what he thought about me and my business and my mother and everything in between, in the heat of the battle. And he goes, "No, you guys were pretty good." He goes, "It's how I am, first off." He goes, "No, we would love to have you guys back as a vendor." And I'm like, "No, we're good, right?" And it's okay, the bridge is open. And again, now, year and some change later, after the dust settled, it's like, "Wow, the bridge is still open." And in my head, I thought this guy was going to choke me out. It's like, no, he was just pissed off, and it was a project that went to shit, and there's other variables, and it was never personal. He is a professional relationship, and so that idea that when things change in your life doesn't mean all the people change. I talked about, I had a phone call right before my last podcast. It was the old co-host I had at this podcast, Casey Bubba Lawrence. I've been doing the podcast now almost a year solo. It was June of last year that I went on my own, and he called to catch up. We're still buddies. We still talk, and he got out of business ownership, and he was doing consulting work, and then he got employed, and it no longer made sense for him to be on the podcast. And he's like, man, he goes, ever since I got a job, now people are approaching me, to possibly run their businesses or, start a new business. And it's like the same people, and yet they see me in a different light. And now all he also sees is he's meeting new people. So now he's got a new network and he's talking, and they're like, what'd you do before this? He's like, oh, I own a business. Like, oh, that's why
Mhm.
you say the things you say. And it's that constant reminder for us. I continually hear self-limiting beliefs. People like, well, I haven't run a business before. It's like, okay, have you ever, spent money in a bank account and checking account? It's like, yeah, it's the same thing. When it comes to business checking and bank, like, don't spend more than you make. Right? Have you ever
Mhm.
had a job where someone set expectations and you performed them and got paid for it? Yep. That's your relationship with your customers. Like, you've done all the things in some way, shape, or form. You've met a lot of the people. Once you announce to the world, put that spell out there, the abracadabra of who you are and the next milestone of where you're going, people will support you. They'll rally behind you. And this isn't this manifestation. It's like, if you say it loud enough, the heavens will open, and no, it's like, say what you're going to do, and also be very conscious. We said from the top, right? You're 42% more likely to achieve your goal when you write it down. You're actually less likely to achieve major goals when you tell people about them, because you're constantly giving yourself dopamine hits that you did not actually earn. You are more likely to hit your goals when you have an accountability partner and
Right.
you tell them what your next milestone is.
Mhm.
And I learned that. So I talked about in my last show earlier today, um, my experience in Weins Live, that there are things that I did in the past and said in the past were wrong. I used to tell all people about my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goals. And what I
Mhm.
was doing was giving myself credit for shit I hadn't actually earned, worked towards, got,
Mhm.
got.
Mhm.
And so it's very important that when you put the spells out in this world, it's put out this, talk about either what you've done or talk about what you're already doing and you're doing next, and have people hold you accountable. No different. You and I, we said, let's have lunch. Okay. You said, hey, let's get on the podcast. I said, okay. I sent you an email instantly. All right, Barb, call,
Yeah.
balls in your court. Here's Taylor's information. Make it fucking happen. Right? Abracadabra. And here we are.
Here we are. And here
Yeah.
we are. How long, Andy, have you been fascinated with words? So I followed I read your book. So your military, like when
Yeah.
I thought you wrote it in the book somewhere, but somewhere along the line, you had a little shift in how you think.
So a couple things that are interesting. In high school, senior year, we had morning announcements, old school, over the PA.
That
This is
little
Prince.
thing, ding,
Yeah,
ding, ding,
yeah,
ding.
yeah, yeah. This is the principal speaking, blah blah blah. Like right before third period. And once a week on Fridays, we would have the morning announcements that were taped on Thursday afternoon, and then they were broadcast on the old school CRT TVs in the classrooms.
Mhm.
And it was the media studies students. So media studies one, media studies two. The media studies two students would sit there like anchors and be like, "All right, Falls football team, blah blah blah, and we're having pizza for lunch and whatever." Right? So it was like a 7 to 8 minute segment. Um, I had the word of the week. So I was the only one. So every week, it would be different
Yeah,
anchors, people
sure.
practicing, and I was the only one that had my own segment shot in my buddy's uh, bedroom, and I would just have a dictionary and be like, I would throw it. I was like, this week's word, like, so the very first one I did, I still remember. So I would say, do I have a here? Whatever, I'll use this. So I'd be sitting there, and then the camera would come on, and yell action. I'd be like, all right. And the hardest part was getting the throw of the camera, or throw of the book in the shot. And I would say, this week's word is feeking, to wander around aimlessly and without purpose. So this week, you might see me feeking in the hallways. Don't worry, I don't have a hall pass because I'm not really going anywhere. Feeking. Why don't you try using it this week? So I did that. So Feaking. Feeking, that's the one I remember because that was the first one I did. I probably did, I don't know, 25, 30 of them throughout the year.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. I also loved algebra in math, and I love the fact that when you change one thing, everything goes to shit. So I
Mhm.
love doing formulas in Excel. And then it wasn't until 3 years ago when I started writing my first book, Hustle, Struggle, Grind: The 13 Lessons of Life. I started writing it in June. Correction. I started writing it in January. And by April, so 3 years ago at this time, the woman I was writing with, my ghostwriter, Amelia, she looked at me on a Zoom call and she goes, "We got nothing here." There's nothing that binds these 13 things. Essentially, it was 13 bits that I did on stage because I've done keynote speaking. That's my jam. And I liken it to like a comedian that takes his best 13 bits and
Yeah.
writes a book, and there's nothing succinct. Like they're all independently fine, and they don't translate well in the book, and they don't tell a story. They're just these bits. It's like, and I was really convincing her and myself that these all went together.
No.
It's one of those like when you have to like, how do I say? I was trying to make it work, trying to
Mhm.
make it work. So when you want to make it work, it means it doesn't work. So what she said two things to me. She said this kind of reminds me of the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck,
Mhm.
because you're very particular about certain things and not about all these other things, right? Again, focus my energy. And then she goes, the other thing is you're really particular about words. And I said, well, yeah, because words fucking matter. And she goes, boom.
There's your
That's
book.
our thought leadership, right? Let's write that book. So I failed at writing Hustle, Struggle, and Grind, and I succeeded at writing Words Fucking Matter. It wasn't until September that I met Dr. Bill Crawford. And
Mhm.
so in book writing terms, I'd already wrote the outline. I'd already was 3/4 the way through the writing the manuscript. I was going to finish the manuscript by October, November. And all of a sudden I meet Bill Crawford, and I was like, oh, wait, here's the science behind all this bullshit that I'm spitting.
Mhm.
I had some things I was reaching out, and I didn't have that that's it. And so I
Mhm.
met him in September. I interviewed him in October, November, and I pushed the book back like another 2 or 3 months because I'm like, this is the good stuff. And so again, I started off on this journey, and I failed way more times than I succeeded,
Mhm.
and yet I won. It's like I never won a major battle, and yet the war was mine for the taking. And
Absolutely.
so, um, in that regard, setting off and this obsession that I have now with words was not there. This list of shit words, I wasn't like, I'm going to sit down and think of all the words that make me twitch, and I'm going to write shit words, and I'm going to tell people why they suck. It's like that ain't how it went down. That ain't how it went down at all. And actually, what happened was after we wrote the entire manuscript, I got the whole thing. So we've already edited all the chapters. And then I went through the entire manuscript and I typed in if. So space, IF, space. That way it's not any words where IF. And I
Mhm.
hit replace with when. I reread the entire manuscript to make sure every sentence still made sense.
Very cool.
75% of the sentences, when replacing if, made sense. The other 25%, it was a shit sentence.
Mhm.
There was another way to construct a sentence or get rid of it entirely. And then I did the same thing with comma but. I replaced every single comma but with comma and.
Mhm.
And then what I realized is some sentences held true.
Mhm.
Some sentences did not hold true. Okay. The challenge with something like a comma but is that you say one thing, comma but, you say something else that contradicts the original thought.
Mhm.
So, for example, okay, here I'm in Vegas. I got a bum knee today, right? Okay. So last night I went walking, right? And I went walking, and okay, it was a mile from the Bellagio up to the taco joint that I wanted to go to, which is across the street from the hotel I'm at, right? So I can say I want to walk this mile, but my knee is bothering me. Okay,
Mhm.
I replace it with and. I want to walk to the taco stand, and my knee is bothering me. Okay, those two things are true. They don't
Correct.
contradict each other, right?
Yeah.
Versus saying I want to walk the taco stand, right? But I am unable to,
Mhm.
right? It's like, well, hold on, which okay, you want to, but you're unable. In the and now we have okay. So which is true? Are you walking on a bum knee or not? Or I'm not. I can't. I can't.
Mhm.
Right? So I could. And it was a long walk. And this morning I was like, oh, I don't know if that was the right choice. Uber ride would have been better. Tacos were on point. Tacos were delicious.
Worth it. Worth
Um,
it.
El Gordo Taco in Vegas is my favorite taco stand. And I walked in with a guy from Indiana, northwestern Indiana, IT guy here for another convention. We walked in together. He goes, "How do you order? Because it's a fast moving operation. You got to get in. You got to know what you're saying." And of course, I
What, new
jack it
soup
up
for
every
you?
time.
New soup for you kind of
Yeah,
place?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. No soup for you kind of situation. And oh, actually, there we go. And also was Cinco de Mayo yesterday, so there we go. Celebrating, no big deal.
Yep. Yep.
Um, And then he ends up sitting, and we end up talking in line. Then he ends up sitting with me, and I was like the local expert. He's like, no, he goes, I Googled best tacos in Vegas, and this is the spot. I go, awesome. I happen to come here. This is my jam. This is what I do.
I like
Anyway,
the chicken and waffles place. I don't know. I can't remember where that is.
in
Close to,
Vegas,
yeah,
Blueberry, or no? Oh, there's
chicken
a really
yeah,
oh
near
chicken and
the
waffles.
MGM.
Oh, okay, that's okay. So I'm looking over the strip right now. So I'm on Resorts World. So I'm on the north end. I've never really been down to. I've been to Oyo, the old Hooters casino. There's Oyo now. I was there one time. It wasn't. I didn't love it. But yeah, that's MGM. I've never been to MGM
Yeah,
South End.
you know,
Uh,
very, very
anyhow, so
large.
we're just all over the place. Um,
Well, the other thing I was going to say is, so for me, I've been more fascinated with words. Early on, it was because of sport, and I found a poem I wrote when I was 12, and I've dug it back out, and it was all about, I'm the one who wants to hit a home run. I'm the one who wants to swim the fastest. I'm the one who wants to score the most. In reality, I'm lucky if I get in the game. I'm the one who breaks out. And then it ended, Andy, with the last sentence that said, but I will always try.
yeah.
Well, I've had that with me forever. And I've brought it back to the forefront, and I've really looked at what I said, and it was, I won't be the follower, I'll be the leader. And all of these things that I wrote a long, long time ago have really come to fruition. And if I were to, when I rewrite it, it will say, try will be replaced with do. I will always do. And to your earlier point, I will always show up.
Yep.
So things that I've wanted to do in my athletic career, I started doing triathlon when triathlon was just a thing. My first triathlon was 1987. And why did I do it? One of my patients in cardiac rehab said to me, we're just talking about fitness and biking, etc. And their exact question was, well, have you ever done a triathlon? My exact words were, no, but I could. And as soon as I said that, and that was a long time ago, that was in 1987, that set my trajectory towards I could to I will. And and the words, I mean, words matter no matter what it is you're doing. Sport, business, working with patients, and it became my mantra. I will show up, and whatever happens, then the next time I'm going to show up again, and it's going to be different or better. So, and I wanted to do a Hawaiian Ironman. I wanted to qualify. I showed up. I missed it, just like you. I came in third. I had to come in second. I came in fourth. I had to come in third. I came in second. I had to come in first. Failure upon failure upon failure led me to, I'm going to do an Ironman. And I did Ironman Lake Placid. So there was Hawaii, and then there was Ironman Lake Placid. So in 2000, I decide I'm going to do this Ironman. And I do it, and guess what? I qualify for Hawaii. How did that happen? To me, it was persistence, it was resilience, and I can tell you a whole slew of things that have happened that have pushed me down so far and so like deep into this kid will never do it again to I'll show you. And sometimes that I'll show you could be a detriment. For me, it's been that positive movement forward, that effort is a choice. All of those words, all of those decisions have continued to put me on the path of where I want to go, not where I've been. And you said earlier, looking in the past versus looking in, being in present and looking in the future. When, the word nostalgia, at one point it was on the DSM disorders, like a long time ago. So that was a mental health disorder, having this nostalgia. I'd have to go back and get you the exact reference to that. And I thought about it. It makes sense that that could have been a mental health disorder if someone is living
Yeah, correct. When you're only living there and not living in
Yeah,
the reality, the real reality, whatever
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
call that. Yeah.
It fascinated me when I learned that. And the other thing I'd like to share with you is I lost a friend. She was bicycling and was hit by a drunk driver on a hit and run.
Hmm.
And her name is Nancy. Very much about the journey, not the destination, the journey. And same with business. Every day, focus on where you are, the process. The process will get you to your outcome. And often we focus on this outcome way out there. And to your other point, that dopamine, yeah, I'm going towards it. I'm going towards it. It's what you do today, right? And I have a tattoo on my ankle in her memory, and it is Ishi go Ishi, and it means each moment only once, or one
Hmm.
meeting, one time, never to be repeated. Which, when you think about it that way, one meeting, one time, never to be repeated, you become much more present. If you lean into that, I'm present with you. I'm not thinking about negation, acknowledge. I'm not thinking about where I'm going later.
Hmm.
When you set the stage for this, you did your 90 minutes in the exhibit hall, you had lunch, and you were ready,
Yep.
which means you are present. One meeting, one time, never to be repeated. Now we could watch the video. Still, one meeting, one time. So ishi go ichi, each moment only once, and that focuses on your present moment. When I was climbing that mountain last year at 29:29, I worked very hard on the words I was using. So the day I was to climb the mountain, it was out in the future, and I worked to avoid the word I can't, or the sentence I can't wait until that day. It was more, I'm excited for that day to come, but I
Yep.
was, what is today? What is today that's going to get me to that mountain? Because I don't want to can't wait my life away.
Mm.
I want
I
to
love.
live
I
now.
love that. I've often struggled with that one. I can't wait for this thing to happen, and I really have struggled with that exact thing. Okay, what because I eliminated the word can't.
Hmm.
So yeah, correct. And that's also like when you say missing, right? I miss you or I miss this because that's
Hmm.
so I miss is the past version of I can't wait. There's a future version
Right.
of that not embracing the current present moment as the most important moment.
Hmm. I started, Andy, a daily habit. I started it January 1, and I've held it through all the way to, what are we, May 6th,
Yep.
and it is a memorable moment. I have it in my calendar,
Hmm.
like you and I talked. It's in my
Yep.
calendar, so every single day I have at least one. Oftentimes I have more, and it's a memorable moment. At the end of each month, I do a little bit of I use my friend ChatGPT. I feed every memorable moment that I had that previous month, and it writes a whole story or a theme of my month. Why am I doing it? Because, just like I shared earlier, I don't want to all of a sudden wake up one day and say, what the hell happened in my life? And even in a week, if you're writing down these memorable moments, you'll and when you look for it, you will find it at the end
It-
of the day, right? If you are consciously, from the moment you wake up, you are becoming aware of all the things that are happening around you. It might be a smile when you walk into your office from your admin person. It may be you ran into a friend at the exhibit hall and you had that conversation. Write it down. Remember, when you think it, ink it.
yep.
And I can go back now. I have 4 months, and I go back and I read these. It fills my heart. And all of those little things, some might be very tiny, some might be big. If I'm not consciously looking for it and then writing it down, I miss it. I miss it.
And because you're doing this habit ritualistically,
Hmm.
you are now also pre-programming your brain to look for things
Yes.
to write down this month. And that again, the episode title is going to be when you think it, ink it, because that is a best practice, and to start to wrap up the show here, it is no different than with business. Last story, we had a new employee, or he's going to be a new employee. He graduates high school in like in a month, and the first thing that came out of our guys' heads are, well, yeah, he's not going to be able to be a crew chief because he can't be a driver because you have to have 3 years of driving experience necessary, right? And I go, guys, stop thinking about what he can't do. What can he do? We got an 18-year-old kid fresh out of high school. They're teaching AI in high school now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he's got to take to that. Like, what can he do that does not involve driving a vehicle within our company? He's a smart kid. I met him when he interviewed. He goes, yeah, I'm looking for a place to start my career and I don't want to go to college. I was like, okay, very smart, very capable. So it's very much like, okay, let's not focus on the can't, let's focus on the can. What does this individual bring to us
Mm-hmm.
that's going to allow us to grow with him? And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. It's like, yeah. So what can this person do? So again, shift in mindset, spells, you think it ain't, get all the beautiful things. Let's get to the big finish. What has been your memorable moment? I normally say top takeaway. What has been your memorable moment over the last 60 minutes of our conversation?
First memorable moment is when you said we're live, because I wanted to do this and we made it happen.
Hmm.
And I love that. And I love there's lots of memorable moments. I'll sit down and I'll write them all when we're off air. And what I love about this interaction, Andy, is how you started out. We've come from very different backgrounds. I often say we are far more alike than we are different, just humanity.
Yep.
And regardless of the different backgrounds we've come from, we actually are on the same path forward, which is how do we become who we are with the most positive outcomes using a gift of words. It's simple. You talked about simplicity. I have a mantra that says, I'm in pursuit of simplicity. It's like
Mm.
simplicity, just being simple. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't say that my mindset coaching has been through Enlifted and Mark England. And we talk a lot about the simplicity of defining mindset. You spoke
Yep.
earlier of if you don't know where you're going, how do you get there? Well,
Yes.
so how do you work? Most people can't define mindset. And so if you can't define it, how do you work on it?
Yep.
And so we use in the Enlifted method, we use a simple mindset is the story you tell yourself. And those stories are made up of words. It's that simple. So when you keep things simple, it's easier for us to work on them. So back to what's my memorable moment, being here with you, number one, and finding these unique differences yet similarities in how we think and how we both want to convey that words matter
Yep.
because they do, and how the simple words fucking matter can improve the lives of everyone. That's what I love.
No, I appreciate that. I love your thought that when you think it, ink it, because that is it's a practical battle cry. I often tell people, make it simple, right? You said
Mhm.
you said it, simplify it, make it simple so it's systematic and thorough and repeatable.
Yeah.
And then once you ink it, then it's real. A thought is not real. Once you put it on paper, it is real and it is tangible. It is addressable. You're able to communicate it. So I love that you think it, when you think it, ink it, because it's about simplifying your brain, right?
Mhm.
Because when you got that wash machine full of marbles,
Right.
right, that
Right.
that 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 is not simple. Well, it's pretty simple to press stop and start pulling the marbles out and
Right.
and put the marbles somewhere. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, coming up next week, I will be off again. Next week, I'm going to be in San Diego at a conference. We did not have a guest lined up, so I decided we're going to be off next week. And we had an episode or two backlog, so you'll get an episode every week for our non-live listeners. You still get the good stuff every week. And then after that, we are wide open. So for those of you that want to be on the podcast, go to trashtalkbusinesspodcast.com, apply to be a guest. Also share the podcast with family, friends, coworkers, business associates, so we can expand our listenership and also bring on the best and brightest in our industry and other industries to continue to make this podcast what it is. I will also have more and more of our employees on the podcast. Excuse me. I would love to hear. I do love to hear. I will love to hear. I want to hear what you got to say. I want to hear your feedback on the types of guests that we're having out here on the show, so that we can, again, continue to get the guests that are going to move the needle and best serve you and your businesses. So the feedback, set of guests, I really do appreciate that. Like I said, we are season 4. This is year 4 of doing the podcast, 157 episodes later, and we're still going strong. This is the best hour that I put into the business and the best hour I put into the industry every single week. So I thank you that join us live, and I appreciate all of you individuals that download and listen regularly. So thank you from me to you. On behalf of Taylor, our producer, Barbara, our guest, I'm Andy Weins, and this has been another amazing episode of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. We will see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye
Andy.
now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Tap subscribe or follow to get the latest episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and tell a friend to listen. To learn more, visit trashtalkbusinesspodcast.com. Bye now.